Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Today, I have Barry Lynch with me, and he is located in Dublin, Ireland, which we just went to in the summer of 2022. So I'm excited to connect with him. But as much fun as it would be to sit and talk about Ireland for 30 minutes on this podcast, we're going to be talking about Barry's business. He owns Paradigm Coaching. And he is an ordinary man with a rare ability to help people achieve extraordinary results. He has been there and done that, and he loves working with people to overcome what he has overcome himself. Barry, I'm excited to chat with you and hear a little bit about that adversity and how you've turned it into a way to help other people.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Yeah, I've been in business now for almost 33 years. It seems like a long time. But I would have initially started in the service industry. So I started with actually an American franchise company called ChemDry. We were operating a franchise here in Dublin, and we then scaled it up to a second franchise and then a third franchise. So we tended to do quite well from that, and then we expanded from the carpet cleaning into contract cleaning, and we just started adding other services. And I was lucky enough that the business did quite well, and that we hit seven figures. And then my brother got involved with it. But I would say that my work ethic was pretty good. But again, it led probably to burnout and exhaustion.
Yeah, common story. I go through phases where my work ethic is like top notch, and then I get burnout, and then my work ethic is non-existent. So I definitely understand how that goes. So how did you go from, running that franchise into kind of the online space?
So I did that for like I think it was 11 years. And then I sold it. And I sold it with the intention that I wasn't going to work as hard and that life was going to become a lot easier. But that didn't happen. I got involved with another company, a franchise company, but I became the master franchise holder. So I start selling franchises. And we built that up to a multiple seven-figure business, but we also built it up to a multiple franchise position. Um, it actually got worse because that was more 24-hour than the other business. And then we found that the exhaustion was worse, and the frustration was worse. But yet we were making lots of money. So we thought that, well, look, this is the way it is. This is the way life is. And, if you want to earn lots of money, you got to work hard and do it. And what I didn't know, what I now know, which was 5 years ago, I established that, in fact, it was just my mindset. It was the way I thought, is the way I was, I suppose, brought up. But that's no disrespect to my parents or anything like that, because I learned about paradigms and habits and beliefs. And then I started to understand how the mind works. And that changed a lot of things for me.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that you've kind of taken your experience and, dissected it and said, okay, well, here's what worked and here's what didn't, and here's why I ended up feeling the way that I did, and how can we kind of move on from that. So tell us a little bit about the paradigm coaching and like who you work with and what you work with them on.
Yeah, so it's funny. I would have, like, in my early stages, I wanted to be the lone entrepreneur. I wanted to, be a millionaire without getting the help of anyone. That's the first biggest mistake because that's what I tried to do, and that's why it took me so long to do it, over 20 years. However, when I'd realized about the paradigms and how they operate, I went to the US and Canada, and I spent a fortune on training and with mentors. One of the mentors was Bob Proctor, in fact. I was in his home on occasions, and he taught me a lot of things that I didn't know, and that allowed me to change everything. And that's how I ended up primarily running an online business. Now, before I did the coaching, well, I was always coaching for about 16 years with franchisees, but it was a bit of a selfish coaching because they were paying me a percentage of what they earned.
Mm.
Whereas now the coin is flipped. Now I do it because I know where people are and what's happening to them. They get caught up with their paradigms. And as a result of that, they don't realize that time passes by and that their success can be a lot easier than what they think. because when we look at paradigms, it's our habitual behaviors. So we get up at the same time, go to bed at the same time, but we do the same thing when we're operating our businesses. And then we think that, we don't have enough money, or we don't have enough skills, or we don't have ABC. But in fact, we do. Everything is there. The knowledge tends to be there. It's a bit like when you read a book, but you don't put it into action. But then you
Yeah.
say, yeah, no, I know how to do that. They say, yeah, but you're not doing it. And that's where the problem is. So that's what I had identified with me, for starters. I had all this knowledge, but I wasn't using it. And then when I identified it with other people, it made it easier for me to help them achieve what they wanted, not what they needed, because most people strive for what they think they need. But when you start to go after what you want, everything changes. It becomes a good game.
Yeah. 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 I love that. And that's definitely, I think a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, very quickly get into the cycle of constantly thinking about what they need to do about, to get their business moving, and they're thinking and spinning their wheels, and they have all these ideas, and then they feel like they've done all this work. And
Yeah.
then you like actually ask them, you're like, okay, so what did you do today? And they're like, oh, well, I didn't post anywhere, and I didn't send an email to my list, and I didn't, record a podcast episode. I didn't actually do anything, but I'm mentally exhausted because I spent all day thinking about things that I should be doing. So, yeah, that's definitely a struggle that I think a lot of people get into.
Yeah, look, it's Albert Einstein. You can't solve the problem with the same thinking you went into it. And that's, I say that a lot because that's exactly what happened to people. They focus on their bank account. They've no money. They can't get work. They get stressed out about the money. They're trying to get work. They're trying to get customers or clients, and then they're trying to figure it all out. Whereas, what we do, or what I do, is we look at working on a business and not in a business. So therefore, I can have a strategic plan in place of how to change the mindset, how to adapt the goals, how to put them into place, how to get clarity on them, and of course, how to avoid the confusion. And when you put all that into play, well, then you can start to change the habits that they have, adapt new habits or behaviors to allow you to get a new habit. And when you implement them or put them into place, well, then you can start to take the actionable steps to get to where you want to go with your goals, or get to what you want in life.
Yeah. So what kinds of businesses do you typically work with?
Yeah, it's a funny one because I remember when I first started in the coaching from a full-time space 5 years ago, people used to say to me, look, you need an avatar, you need a niche, and this is really important. And I went, great, okay. So I started off with, carpet cleaners, because that's what I did for 11 years. And then I went to, locksmiths, because that's what I did for another 15 years, or actually 23 years. So it turns out that I seem to attract all ends of businesses. So, I've got car dealers, I've got a lady in property developer in Australia, I've got a solicitor in the UK, I've got two online entrepreneurs between Ireland and England. It just seems to be varied, but yet I go after service orientated businesses, but I just seem to attract everything and anything. So I can't put my finger on it, but it just seems to happen that way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we see the same thing. We go after predominantly online digital entrepreneurs, but
Mhm.
right now we have a client that they own a cattle ranch in Wyoming. So it's like it's just so like random who you get connected with, and they're awesome to work with. And so I think that's when people ask me that same question, I'm like, we work with good people. That's what we do. We come in and we say, we believe in what you're doing, and we think the strategy will work for you, and that's how we figure it out. Is if we are matched on more of a personality level, it feels like, then you fit our specific client avatar. And I think a lot of people are kind of moving away from that. I only work with this people, and they have to have this kind of business and like to play tennis on the weekends. And I feel like
Yeah.
people got into the client avatars just a little bit too much there for a minute, where it was too specific.
I think partly though, I think one of the problems that I've come across with clients in the past is where when they focus on the avatar, it is the correct thing to do. I do believe that, okay? But it's almost like they're bringing themselves to make a decision that now they're settled with. Whereas when they haven't made a decision, they cause confusion in their own minds. So they're trying to, cast the net out to the big world. and trying to find somebody. But when you define an avatar or a niche, you've now decided on it. And when you start to go after it, well, then like you're open to receive from everywhere, and
Yeah.
then it just seems to happen. That seems to be what I come across a lot.
Yeah, yeah, and that's I think it's I agree. I think it's important to have, a person in mind if you don't have a clear kind of direction on these are the types of people that I want to work with. Like all of our
Mhm.
clients still own a business, right? Like they still are, wanting to build an audience. They have certain things in common. So I definitely agree with that and think that it's important to have a direction. And you're right, when you kind of are putting stuff out there and talking about your process and putting out testimonials and wins from people, then the people who are the right fit to work with you tend to find that and be drawn into it. So is there anything about your coaching and kind of the process, or how you start working with people that you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, I suppose, like as I said, I find that when I start working with people, the first thing I would do is find out what the problem or issue is and then help them solve that. And I know that's a bit of a cliche, but it's funny the amount of people that I coach that have had coaching before but haven't had the results. And then I can get them a quick win or a quick result from what they're doing because I identify what the paradigm is holding them back. And in some cases, it could be money. People have a money paradigm. If you give them €1 million today, they say, "Oh, I'm going to buy this, buy that," but in a short period, the money is gone.
Yeah.
And it's almost like when you put yourself in a position of having received what you want, and that's why I talk about what you want. When you put yourself in that position, it becomes easier to get to what you want, and then when you get what you want, it's easier to go from there to the next stage. But certainly, what I found is the program that I put together is 28 skills. And as I always say, necessary skills, because I'm coming across business owners that are very experienced in their business, but they lack skills. Now, I know that's not all business owners. It's not fair for me to say that, but I mean just the people that I help, because I need to identify. If I identify somebody who knows everything, well, then I can't help them,
Right.
and that's plain and simple. Yeah, I'm not a know-all. I just know what I know, and that's what I help people with. So I suppose when we look at the skills like the marketing, and most people say, I have a problem with my business. And I say, what's the problem? And they say, oh, I can't get clients, or I can't get customers. I don't have the money. Well, if I could only do ads on Facebook, but the reality of it is, even if they did do ads on Facebook, they probably still wouldn't get the clients,
Yep.
because it's actually the inner person that has to change first. And a bit like what we just spoke about a few minutes ago, when the person changes themselves and changes what their vision is and puts it all and gets clarity on it, it's almost like a guided roadmap to where they need to go. And then it's just about taking the right actionable steps to get there.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I used to run Facebook and Instagram ads, so that definitely hits home as I would have people come to me to run their ads and I'd be like, "Okay, well we need to see like what's your validated offer?" And they're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"Well, we have to have a validated offer. We have to have something that you've sold before that we know like Facebook ads, any kind of marketing is gasoline on a fire. Like you
Yeah.
need to know this is the direction you're going in, that thing is going to sell, that you have everything, and a lot of it is that mindset stuff where people are putting out what they think people want and not, what people really want or what they really want to be putting out into the world. And so it's people come, they're like, oh, if I could just run Facebook ads, or if I just had this many followers on Instagram, or if I just had this. And none of those things are going to make any difference until you really have your offer solid and really know the direction you want to go in. So I love that you kind of help people figure out that process and figure out that direction, without trying to, people spend thousands of dollars on Facebook ads and hop from one offer to the next,
Yeah.
throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. And none of it ends up sticking. And then they're $10,000 in the hole and have nothing to show for it.
Figure
So,
it out. Yeah, and then
yeah,
they say it doesn't work. Yeah, you're right. Look, I've seen it happen so many times, but also when you look at um when you first of all like create confidence with themselves in themselves, as you say, with their offer, what they're offering, what they're doing, because sometimes somebody can put an offer together but it's actually not their offer. I always get them to build it themselves. I give them guidance and I get them to build it themselves. And they say to me, oh, can you help me with the wording on it? I say, no, you have to do it, because this is what you're going to be talking to your customers about, not me. if I do it, you're not going to be comfortable. You're not going to be confident with it. And then, I get them to build out, whether it's a landing page or whether it's the whatever information is relating to what they do, I get them to build it out. If they don't have a course, I can get them to build that out very quickly. But it just means by the time they get to that stage, they're now very confident to jump to the next stage. So they say, oh, all I want is leads, all I want is leads. And I say, but if I get you leads, you're not going to be able to close them because
Yeah.
you don't have what you need to get to that stage. So if
Hmm.
we do the foundation, like building a house, and then we can move to getting your leads. And when we get your leads, we'll get the appointments. And when we get the appointments, then we've got to teach you sales. So
Right.
it's almost like all these pillars have to be sorted, but they have to start at the beginning. You can't just jump like
Yeah.
doing Facebook ads, get 1,000 leads and, making one sale.
Yeah, yeah, very, very true. I think everybody wants to skip that foundation because that's not the fancy, the
Yeah.
appealing stuff. Everybody's
Yeah.
just like, I just want 1,000, sales. I want 10,000 followers on Instagram. I want, all of the higher level stuff. But if you don't do the foundational pieces first, if you're not clear on your messaging and confident in that messaging and have a good way to articulate it, then it's not going to make any difference because you're going to end up spinning your wheels and doubting what you're doing and all of the things.
Yeah, no, I agree for sure. Look, it seems to be across the board. It's not just say coaches and consultants. It's actually every business. Knowing the service industry business, I know where they're coming from. And sometimes you can throw money at various different things and you think they're going to work and then they don't work.
Mhm.
But when you look at it, like if I were looking at a business that's already up and running, I dissect the business. So I find out where the leaking bucket is, because you can find that, somebody is spending, say, I don't know, maybe 1,000 a month on Facebook ads or Google ads, right? And then we look at how many leads they're getting. And then we look at how many close rates they're having. So we look at the KPIs for everything and we can find out what's gone wrong. And in some cases, like I've come across a client where they're doing Google ads, but they're not actually getting anything in return. So they're paying a company to do the ads, they're paying for the ads, but they're getting zilch. And I say, stop it. Stop. You got to stop. You got to stop straight away because you're just throwing away money. That's
Yeah.
not working for you. So it doesn't suit your business. Move on to something else. But it's funny when an outsider like me comes into a business and is able to identify it and turn it around then so that it brings them into positive as opposed to negative. And that's what I find when it comes to a performance-based coaching, where you're confident enough to know what you're looking at, to be able to identify a problem and solve it. And then, of course, it's a win-win because I get satisfaction knowing I've done something for them to help their business. And then they get satisfaction knowing that I've solved the problem.
I love that you are very passionate and invested in people getting results and helping them find the bottlenecks and the holes and where they should be putting things. And being data focused is so important because a lot of times, especially with our podcasting stuff, people will look at it and be like, well, I don't really feel like this is working. And I'm like, okay, well, let's look. Okay, so since we started doing this,
Yeah.
your stats have gone up, you've made more sales, you've done this, and there's all of these stats we can look at to say this is working or it's not, and we need to adjust things and we need to change and we need to figure out what we need to do. So I love that you look at both the paradigms and the data and put those things together to try to create a forward path for people. So we will link everything up in the show notes for people to go check out your coaching and your website.
Yeah.
Is there any last minute things that you want to leave the audience with?
No, look, I suppose it really is when I say to entrepreneurs, as I was there, for many years, I always considered myself an entrepreneur. And I probably shouldn't say this, but I always wanted to be Donald Trump like 30 years ago. But what I didn't realize that, there is a learning curve, but it doesn't have to be as steep. Using mentors and coaches in the right context can be very rewarding. The problem is that most people say they have a mentor, but in fact they don't, because a good mentor that you work with, you're going to have to pay. A mentor that you're not paying is just somebody that you admire, but you don't actually really know what's going on with them because you don't know them well enough. And sometimes even if you do know them, you don't actually know what's happening in the background.
Yeah.
And, people considered me as being very successful, which I was, but I had a lot of other stuff going on, problems with me in the background, self-image and portraying this person that I really wasn't. So what I would say is, always look at everything in its context. Again, look at data. If you're looking at a coach, look at the results. Look at what it is you want, not what you think you need. And then you can find that you'll find what you're looking for if you look in the right place.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. And again, we will link everything up in the show notes so people can connect with you. And thank you for sharing all about your journey and your business with us.